Hi, good evening everyone. Today is the day 29. Today is the day 28 of the Gear Up Mains answer writing. In this session, we are discussing the previous year questions. We are providing you the question in the Telegram groups and you people are writing the answer. We are also evaluating these questions. The idea behind these classes to understand the main demand of the question, exactly what the question is demanding, how we can break a question into multiple parts before writing it, and a brainstorming part before start writing your answer. If you're understanding the core demand, it will become very easy to write an answer. Without understanding the demand, if you start writing the answer, your answer should not be have a flow. Coherence nahi hoga in between the different paragraphs, in between the main demand of the question. So a suggestion to you, please try to think about the questions, exactly what the question is demanding. Break down the question in the multiple parts before writing it, brainstorm for 30 seconds and then start writing the answer. In this week, we are discussing the question of social justice. So today's question is related to the new education policy. Everybody know the new education policy. This question was asked in the UPSC CSE 2020 and the question carried the 15 mark. This was a 15 marker question. Means the question should have the multiple parts. According to the marks, we can also let this question has the multiple parts. So let's see exactly what is the main core demand of the question and how we can break this question into the multiple parts. The question is saying National Education Policy 2020 is in conformity with the Sustainable Development Goal 4. So there is a keywords conformity with the Sustainable Development Goal 4 2030. It intended to restructure, then again the keywords restructure and reorient the education system in India. Restructure and reorient education system in India. Critically examine the statement. And we need to examine critically this statement, which means we need to be right the both the part, means what is the positive side as per the demand of the question and the negative sides which the new education policy is not fulfilling. So if we break down the question, so first we will focus on the conformity, means how the Sustainable Development Goal 4 and the new education policy are the similar one. New education policy are the similar one, or the new education policy how on the line of the Sustainable Development Goal 4. So we need to give the some of the points from the Sustainable Development Goal 4 which are similar to the NEP, or the NEP points which are similar to the Sustainable Development Goal 4. This is the one part which the question is demanding. Now let's come to the second part. The question is also saying how NEP is restructuring. So the next part will be the NEP restructuring the education system in India, and how it's reorienting, means what this education policy is introducing so that it reorient the old education system in the country. How it's restructuring means there is a change in the curriculum. Reorientation means there is a change in the application part also. Now we will focus on the skill level. Now we will focus on the multiple entry exit points. Now we will focus on the a holistic education. Initially this was not in the old education policy. So till now there is a first part, Sustainable Development Goal 4 and the NEP coherence conformity. In the second part, how the NEP is restructuring the education system, then how it's reorienting the education system. So these are three parts, but there is a tail attached to the statement, the critically examine the statement. Critically examines means we will also write about the issue related to the new education policy, and we will also write about what can be done. What can be done or how the NEP can be improved. So these are the 5 breakdown keywords of this question. If we need to address this question, we need to address these 5 subheads under the question. I hope the demand of the question is clear to everyone. So according to this, we will break the question and we will address the each part. We will also write the introduction, body and the conclusion. Everybody knows their question is mainly having the 3 parts, the introduction, body and the conclusion. And the body is having these 5 parts according to the main demand of the question. In the introduction, you can simply write about the new education policy, and you can also link it with the sustainable development goal. The government of India start implementing the new education policy, which is specifically based on the skills, which is specifically to complete the target of the sustainable development goals, which is focusing on the reorientation of the education system in the country. So you can write the introduction on these lines. Critically examine के broad pictures क्या होगा? In critically examines में we will write the positive side of the new education policy, how it is different from the old education policy, and in the negative sides we will write about how this policy is not effective or it's missing something, like it's missing about the multiple language and it's specifically it's diversing from the English language. It is focusing on a 6% spend of the GDP, but in nowadays we are only spending the 2% of the GDP on education system. How the gap of 4% and what is the source for that spending? How we can stop the dropouts from the schools when it's focusing on the skill level. So these are some of the issues we need to be addressed in the issue part. So broadly, whenever there is a critically examine, so we need to be right about both the part. One, the positive part of the policy and the negative part of the policy and how we can improve it. So this is the main broad structure when there is a tail attached as a critically examine in the question. Okay, so simply you can write the introduction, you can introduce with the new education policy and the link it with the sustainable development goals. Now, let's come to the main part of the question, how it's conform with the SDG 4, how it's restructuring the education system, how it's reorienting the education system, and critically examine the statement means we need to be address the negative sides and how it can be improved. Okay, so let's come to the first part, how it's reconfirm. So these are the 5 parts I write here. So these are the 5 parts we address line to line. So let's come to the first one. In the first part, there are some of the points given on the board related to the one is the part of the National Education Policy 2020, and these are the points of the Sustainable Development Goal 4, and we see the similarity between these points. The first point of the SDG 4 is saying quality primary secondary education for all. The same point, universal access to children and the education for all, setting same education for the all, then the quality education. This is also the goal of the new education policy and the same goal of the Sustainable Development Goal 4. If we see the next, early childhood pre-primary education, here we are focusing on the pre-primary education also. Equal access for the higher education, we are focusing on the technical skills and the higher education. Skill for decent work, we are focusing on the decent skills also. Gender equality and the equal access to all, this is also the point here about the gender equality and the equal access. We are focusing on the literacy, like there is a numeracy and the literacy. We are focusing on the literacy and the numeracy. Then it's also saying about the scholarship for the higher education, safe and the learning environment, sustainable development and the global citizenship. Similar points we are covering into the new education policy. If we are looking at the academic bank of credits, multiple entry and exit points, ensure majority population below 35 years of age has skills which are complement with the skills and the education for all. So these points are common in the both Sustainable Development Goal 4 and the New Education Policy 2020. So we need to compare, we need to be right how it's conform with the Sustainable Development Goal 4. Like the Sustainable Development Goal broad head is education for all. Similarly, they are linking the New Education Policy with the Sustainable Development Goal 4. So whenever you are writing your answer in the mains paper, you can write in this tabular form or you can write in the subheading forms mentioning the one part of the education policy and the second part of the Sustainable Development Goals. In these 4.1, 4.2 points, this comes under the Sustainable Development Goal 4. So this is the first part of the answer. Now, how it is restructuring, how the new education policy is restructuring the education system. Now they break down them at multiple levels, specifically the 4 levels. So we can see how NEP is restructuring and reorienting the Indian education system. So they are the keyword, I make them yellow, the restructuring and the reorient. How this is restructuring and reorienting? In the restructuring means we change the curriculum. Initially there was no 4-stage structure, now we are introducing the 4-stage structure. The foundational level up to 3 to 5 years of the age, preparatory levels up to 3rd to 5th class, middle up to the 8th class and secondary up to the 12th class. So we break down till the 12th class into the 4 specific phenomenon, the 4 foundational, preparatory, middle and the secondary level. Next is single regulatory body. If we see right now, there are multiple regulatory bodies in the education system. Now the government is focusing on a single regulatory body for under the new education policy. That is the Higher Education Commission of India. If we writing the short here, HECI, Higher Education Commission of India. Now there will be a single regulatory body under the new education policy. Initially, even till now, there is a multiple body which are controlling the education system. Open schooling system means the person can do the open schooling. This is specifically for bring the 2 crore children to the mainstream so they can join the schooling, and this is the main key where they are focusing to providing the skills to the population so that people can join from anywhere. Addressing the early childhood in the age group of 3 to 6 years. There is specifically curriculum design for the 3 to 6 years. So this is also the new change in the new education policy. And the exam, 2-time exam. Multiple body as examples like UGC is controlling, CBSE is controlling, and the various board like the ICSE is controlling, and there are some of the other body which are controlling the education system in India. So Ministry of Education, so they are making a Higher Education Commission of India which will specifically focus on the education system instead of the multiple body. Okay, then the exam twice. Now until the last year there was a single exam for a 10th and the 12th, like you can give an exam once in a year, in a March you can give the exam, but now they are focusing on twice exam for a 10th and the 12th, so the student can easily pass the class 10th and 12th and can break up the syllabus. So they are introducing these new into the examination pattern also. So these are the new restructuring points where the new education policy is restructuring the education system. So if we are coming to the next part, how it is reorienting means how it's changing. Initially we are focusing on the rote learning, we are not focusing on the skills level, we are not focused on the application based, we are not focusing on the teacher upgradation programs, we are not linking the technology with the education, but under the new education policy, all these things are linked. We are focusing on now the critical thinking, experimental learning, artificial intelligence, big data analytics, all these will be introduced under the education curriculum. Initially, these were not included. According to the new education policy, these will be included under the new education policy 2020. Now we are focusing on the holistic education. Initially, if we are in the science stream, we cannot take the art subject. If I am doing the BTech, I cannot take the art subject. In the class 12th, I am taking the science stream, I cannot take the commerce, economic subjects. But now we are focusing on a holistic education, a multidisciplinary education. The subject I want to read, I want to learn, I want a degree, so I can take that subject with the graduation, with the class 12th also. In the BTech now I can also read the history, it's my choice. So we are focusing on the holistic education, so it's reorienting the education system in the country. So you need to mention these points. Academic bank of credits. Initially there were no credits given for the passing the multiple streams, the multiple subjects, even the graduation level. Now there is a multiple credit system there. So you can be credited with the points when you are passing them any exam. So you can also transfer those credits. Application oriented. Initially, the education system was not application oriented, we are not linked with the industry. Now, the education system have also linked with the industry and it's application oriented education system. We are moving away from the rote learning. If we are doing anything, so we should be application oriented. National Research Foundation, a research body will be set up which is specifically focus on the research in the education system, how we can improve the education system in the country, how we can focusing on the skills level, how we can use the technology. So a research body, the National Research Foundation, is established under the new education policy. Then about technology, the integration of technology with the classrooms, with the teacher upgradation program, linking of the new kind of technology like the ChatGPT, AI with the education system. These are also the new change under the new education policy, which was not earlier in the old education system. So how the new education policy restructuring and reorienting the system. Okay. Now let's come to the part which is saying that critically analyze the statements. We address the first part, we compare it with the sustainable development goals, we focused on the restructure part, we focused on the reorient part, and now we will focus on the critically analyze how it is can be improved and what is the flow, what is the issue in the new education policy. Flow in the proposed restructure. Sacrificing English means if you are reading the main provision of the new education policy, you will find that we are focusing on the local language also, given the preference to the local language in the education system in the earlier classes. So in the some or one way it can be happen, we are sacrificing the English on the basis of the local language. This can be, ho sakta hai. Implementation hurdles. Every states have a different language, so there can be an implementation issue with respect to the local language. How the underrepresented group which is having the issue with the education, how it can be included under the education system. This is also the flow in the proposed restructuring of the education system and the new education policy. And graduation versus diploma, under the new education policy, the graduation is now the 4 years instead of the 3 years. And the diploma is of the 2 years. Now discouraging the young who want to work early, they will choose the diploma instead of the degree because there is a 2-year gap. 2-year diploma and the 4-year degree. So there is a 2-year gap in between the diploma and the degree. Those who want to work early, the financial condition is not good, they are discouraged to do diploma instead of a degree. Okay. And now what can be improved? What can be improved? The issue. What can be the issue we can address? As in the intro part, we discussed about the funding issue. Now, at present, we are spending approximately 2.5 to 3% GDP on the education. 2% to the 3% average of GDP on the education. But now, the new education policy proposes 6% of the GDP spending on the education. And how it's possible? What is the source for this spending? This is not clarified in the new education policy. So this is the issue. What is the source for this spending on the education system? Till now, we are only spending the 2.5, 3% of the GDP on the education. Early dropout issue, how we are going to solve this early dropout in vocational training. If the people learn the skills, it may lead to the early dropout from the schooling system. Like the government is saying after the 8th class, we are focusing on the vocational training. There is a negative side effect of it. It may lead to the early dropout. Education under Schedule 7, it comes under the concurrent list. Central government is making the policy. The state government is having only the implementation power. So, what's the framework of the policy? What the center is designing? Is it good for each state? So, implementation issue will be there with each states when the central government is making the policy of the education. Right to education and new education policy. Lack of synchronization between. The lack of synchronization between the education policy and the right to education. So there is a various synchronization issue. Multilingualistic issue, need to address the different local language in the multiple states due to the great diversity of the India. So these are some of the issues related to the new education policy. So you need to be addressed these in your answer, then only your answer will be completed. So they are mainly the 5 parts in this policy, in this question. 1, we need to compare national education policy with the Sustainable Development Goal 4. Then we will focusing on the how it's restructuring the Indian education system. Then we will focus on the reorienting, how it's reorienting the Indian education system. Flow in the restructuring, how it's not completely make a good policy and what are the major flaw in this policy. And then issue, what can be addressed in this policy. These are you need to be right in your answer. I know these are more words, but in this policy you can make some of the flow charts, like issue you can present in the form of flow chart. Even you can suggest some of the way forward, like the World Bank release its policy for the schools, and also they launch a program related to it which focusing on the health of the school going children. They are the a great ruler. These points are taken from the various sources. One of the sources is the new education policy itself, sustainable development goals, and the various newspaper articles. Now come to the conclusion part. How we will conclude this question. This question can be concluded like you can write about any quote of the author related to the education. Education is necessary for all. According to the present situation, we need to be focused on the skills, we need to be focused on the technology, we need to be focused on the teacher upgradation program, and we need to be address these issues which are related with the new education policy. We need to be address the issue of the funding. We need to link this education policy with the industry also, because till now, if anybody is graduated from the college, he is not able to find the job in the most of the cases. So we should also focus on the linkage of the education with the industry as well. So you can conclude this question in the multiple way. One way can be you can directly write any of the quote of the authors related to the education. You can write about ki these should be done, focus on the funding, linkage of the curriculum with the industry, resolve the issue of the multiple language, implementation issue, these can be resolved. We can see the question also if we want to conclude again. National education policy is conformity with the SDG and reorient the education system. So we can also write about the new education policy is same linked with the sustainable development goal 4, which is focusing on the education for all. Even the new education policy is restructuring and reorienting the Indian education system, but still now there is some of the issue related to the education policy, the issue of the spending, the issue of the implementation, the issue of the linkage of the education policy, linkage of the education with the industrial. So these are some of the issues we need to be focused on. So the government should focus on the implementation of the policy and the outcome of the new education policy. So this can be the conclusion of the answer. So you will write the answer in this way. We will meet tomorrow again with the new question related to the social justice at 6 p.m. Please try to write the answer. Without writing the answer, you will not able to identify what mistake you are doing. Are you able to understand the demand of the question or not? जो आपने लिखा है सही लिखा है या नहीं लिखा है, how you can get it. So start evaluating yourself on each step. What is your level in answer writing? What you are thinking? क्या क्या आपने किया है? तो please try to think on that. Please write the answer. You can also submit your answer to the Edukemy portal, so we can evaluate your answer at free of cost. You can join the master program for prelims and the mains on the Edukemy websites at free of cost and submit your answer. Okay, thank you very much. A good day. We will meet tomorrow at 6 p.m. again with the new question. Till now, read your syllabus and make a pace in your preparation. If you are having any of the issue in your preparation, you can contact with the Edukemy. Any of the doubts you want to clear, you can come here. Okay, so we will meet tomorrow again at the 6 p.m. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.